TPN at technophilespodcast.com. I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast.
It wasn't ever sort of like we're some nefarious company under the guise of a university that wants access to Facebook data. It was they were running an experiment, and they used this personality app to extract the data.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Technophiles Podcast. I'm your host, David Geisler, and tonight I am joined by my co-host, Alex Sheehan. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you?
Ooh, a little fanfare. You gave yourself a fanfare there.
I've been trying out. I've been workshopping it. I've lost all support from my colleagues at work. They thought it was funny the first time, but we have a lot of meetings, and I show up late, so
yeah.
They're frowning upon it.
So after the 40th time or something, they're like, cut it out.
I'm hoping it becomes sort of like the Spam-A-Lot thing where like you just keep doing it and pounding it in, like when the knight is galloping over the ridge and they cut back to that maybe,
Sure.
I don't know, 50 times. I'm hoping by like the 45th time, they really kind of clicks for him and it comes back around.
It's funny, then it gets not funny, and then it becomes funny again.
It's all about averages, Dave.
You're a real meta comic, Alex. I got to say.
That's on my IMDb profile. Meta comic. I don't know. I was gonna do a joke.
Alex,
on beating
you're Skyping. Yeah, it's all good. You're Skyping in from New York tonight, as always, and tonight we're gonna kind of do a casual episode. We were talking about topics and what we were going to talk about. And for the past couple weeks, this whole like Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, right? I thought I said it wrong for a second. That has been floating around for a couple weeks now as we record this. So you and I have been having some casual conversations about it. I think we're going to try to chat about it tonight. And I think we have an opportunity here to kind of try to make sense of it all. Now that I'm not saying that the intensity or the important aspects of this topic have ebbed, but certainly some of the panic has ebbed a little. So now we can try to make sense of it all.
Yes.
You see I'm going with this?
Yeah. It's ebbed in the sense that people are like bad at focusing on things that are detrimental to them. But not ebbed in the sense that this has become less of a problem. Right? So like people have stopped caring about it as much as they did when #DeleteFacebook started. But nothing's changed.
That's kind of what I was speaking to, yes. Yes, exactly. 2 weeks ago, every single blog in the country was talking about how you can quit Facebook and how it's hard to do because there's 50 other apps that connect through it, and because everybody's been saying sign in through Facebook their whole life, myself included on some accounts, I must admit. And so where does that leave us? Actually, wait. Why don't you do a quick setup of what went down a couple weeks ago, just in case someone has been living behind a rock, as they say.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things happened. The biggest thing that happened is that there was a data breach in, I believe, around 2014, 2015, that resulted in companies being able to access information on Facebook's social graph, even without the Facebook users opting into that sort of data extraction. And the best way to describe that is there was an application floating around Facebook that had about 250,000 users. And I think what it did, it was like a personality test or whatever, just one of those dumb things in the sidebar that pops up every once in a while.
Yeah.
But what that would do is
like take this quiz to find out what character you are of whatever.
Yeah. I found out myself, I'm Khaleesi from Game of Thrones. I ride a dragon. I have 3 children dragons.
So worth it.
So totally worth it. I've invested in several blonde wigs since then. But what it would do is it would do the sort of we've all gone through it, the OAuth flow, where it says this app would like to access your Facebook data, XYZ, whatever. We click OK because we don't care. What's the harm? I want to take this personality quiz. The harm in that is...
I want to interject for a second, if I may. May I interject? It's back in like season 6 or 7 of this podcast. It seems like we get 1 or 2 of these every single episode, but we did a story about how cool it's going to be that Facebook will create this service either through API or something else that will allow you to log in to apps using Facebook. Won't that be great? Is what we spoke about years ago.
Yeah. The problem with that is,
and I suppose it is on the front end, it is convenient.
Convenience, yes, until the company mismanages its users' data, at which point it becomes a little less convenient.
Indeed.
And the concept there is called like product lock-in. And it's now applying to our social lives, which it never should in the first place, right? So we've locked ourselves into signing and using Facebook across all of these other services. Now, how do we get ourselves out if we want to? But essentially what this...
Do you remember when Facebook was worked right into the operating system of iOS and then they took it out? I wonder if it was for similar reasons.
It possibly could have
Just
been.
as a side note.
I don't know.
Anyway. I'm derailing us. I apologize.
The specific breach we're talking about, though, is the personality app would ask you to use your credentials on your behalf to extract data from Facebook about you. This would allow it to, once you complete the survey, you could share it with your friends, put it on some Facebook page, whatever, doesn't matter. Under the hood, though, it would also allow it to traverse your social graph on Facebook, so all of you, your friends and families, and collect their data as well. So their data being their demographics, their interests, their location, how many frosty margaritas they had after work, all that stuff. And what this resulted in was a company called Cambridge Analytica harvesting 50 million Facebook users' personal data from this app that only had 250,000 users. So
and let's be clear about this. When we say app, we're a lot of times people think that it's an app on a phone or something like that. We're talking about an app that runs inside of Facebook, like within a browser. It's expressed inside the Facebook operating system, quote unquote. That's correct, right?
Yeah. And I think that
I'm losing you.
There was,
I can't hear you.
It had to be around the exact same time that Facebook sort of stopped allowing these apps to exist in the first place. And there's probably some crossover between what we're talking about now and why they stopped allowing that to happen. But for this, they ended up harvesting around 50 million Facebook users' personal data, and they built machine learning models across all of this profile data. And what they were able to accomplish was, with pretty high efficiency, they could tell whether or not they could tell your gender, they could tell your race, and they could tell your sexual orientation. But most importantly, they could tell your political affiliations.
Right.
The model they used was, in broad strokes, they would measure factors against actions. And let's say an action is clicking the like button. They can measure a number of factors that might lead you to clicking a like button on a specific post. And then what they would do is they would measure those factors and action against other people in your network or outside of your network, against their factors and actions. So what that would tell them is, me, Alex, I click a like button on a picture of this Labradoodle. And it might be because I have a lot of pictures of me playing with my friend's dogs. I like this cute puppy. I click, I like this puppy. But it has no data on me and how I interact with cute little kitty cats. But it does know that you, Dave, you've clicked a few like buttons on cute little kitty cats before. So what it can infer from that is we have similar causal factors that lead us to clicking a like button on a little Labradoodle and a cute little kitty cat. We might share those factors when we're about to take an action on Facebook. So, okay, that's all kind of innocuous and cute, but what if we can sort of divine, if we can find the people that are going to be more susceptible to political attack ads or even blatant lies in those political attack ads? Wouldn't it be great if we could take from 250,000 users' data, extract information about 50 million users on Facebook, and keep in mind the core demographic of Facebook are people that are like of voting age, right? Of the Facebook users who are still growing, it's like 30-somethings, 40-somethings are still kind of hanging in there. Younger generations are dropping off. So we're going to extract really key voting metrics about the people that do vote. And we're going to be able to find, of those voters, which ones are going to be susceptible to attack ads and to lies. And we, Facebook, inadvertently are going to be able to, are going to, over the course of a decade, build the most advanced advertising tools and deliver those ads on a platform that, over that same period of time, has been engineered in a way that has a very positive feedback cycle for clicking on these ads, because this is how we monetize and this is how we connect our users to one another. We're gonna make all this economically feasible to pull. And again, like, this is all coming down to, like, okay, Brexit and Donald Trump existing. This is a radio show. We are technically journalists. We cannot have an opinion on the matter, but we can say that there's a group of people that were able to harvest and harness the most powerful propaganda machine that humans have ever constructed, and affect a certain outcome. Now, we're not saying that that was the only reason that Donald Trump is president, and that's not the only reason Brexit happened, but it's a pretty powerful factor.
Right.
All because Facebook mishandled how people interact with its social graph of the data that all of its users give to it.
Now, when Facebook announced the social graph, I don't know, it feels like it was 4 or 5 years ago. I don't have it up in my notes here, but I think I remember us speaking about that on the show as well. And it was maybe it was called the Open Graph back then. It was exciting. It was, we're gonna figure out, we're gonna take all these points of data and we're gonna be able to create new data based on those points for everybody. And small businesses will be able to spend $10 a week and really prioritize and maximize their ads. I mean, we've actually here on this show, a number of times we've experimented with buying a couple ads here and there to try to hit our demographics to celebrate Technophiles itself through Facebook, and then even Twitter and other sources here and there. So that. When you look at it from that perspective, what Facebook has built, it seems like, oh, this is great. This is a lot of information and I can really use it for good. Well, as it goes, when it comes to having power, you can use it in many different ways. And it's my understanding that Cambridge Analytica, they... maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but may I offer this? It's my understanding that like universities and education systems are able to access a lot of data on Facebook for their research, and they get it anonymously and they can use it for research, and that's all well and good and cool. It's my understanding that Cambridge Analytica kind of pretended to be, we'll just say, like a university, and got all of this data that normally a business or an advertising business wouldn't be able to get. And maybe the problem there is that Facebook allowed it to happen. Is that the beginning of the avalanche? Do I have it right?
Yes and no. I think that.
Okay.
So, okay. The machine learning model was invented by a Cambridge student, and Cambridge Analytica, I believe, became a company around this machine learning model. And it wasn't ever sort of like, we're a university. We're some nefarious company under the guise of a university that wants access to Facebook data. They were running an experiment, and they used this personality app to extract the data that they were going to do the
Right.
study on. Now, Facebook, from their perspective, we don't really know whether or not they just said, okay, go ahead, you're an educational institution, here's the data. I think what happened is they didn't know that the parameters for access to data were so wide that the folks at Cambridge Analytica, or what became Cambridge Analytica, could extract data from any users connected to the people that gave them access.
Right.
That's kind of the story right now, is that it was like a legitimate bug in the system that allowed these researchers to collect all this data, and that after the fact they shut it down, and they had Cambridge Analytica delete all of the profile data. However, once you've already, I shouldn't say every machine learning model, but once they've trained this specific kind of machine learning model, the data lives in the model, right? So what I was describing before, where there are these factors that lead us to take actions on Facebook. The idea that that Cambridge Analytica built was they wanted to take this huge set of data, model. Sorry, my dogs are going to lose their mind for a second.
Oh, that's totally fine.
They would take sort of a high density, high resolution view of all of this data, model it such that they could compress it and throw away a lot of the data. So the model would still be just as effective with a, we'll call it, lower definition version of all this data. So even if they did delete all of the original data they extracted from Facebook, it still lives on in the model. And that's sort of what everyone's trying to figure out now is, can they do the same things? Is the data still alive in the machine learning model?
Sure, of course. When you see the headlines, and when I've had so many people ask me about like, oh, Facebook, are they good or bad? Do I keep them? Do I lose them? And I'm kind of like, man, I don't know. I just host a podcast. But what the best I can kind of pull together is that it's not like Facebook was necessarily trying to be malicious, and I'm certainly not trying to defend them. It's more that they were being reckless with who could access their information. So that therein they have some fault there. But most of this activity that people might consider malicious or whatever, that happened once that data had already left Facebook.
Yes. And the way I describe it is the heads of these divisions, and Sheryl Sandberg and Mark Zuckerberg, they're either, because they're not stupid, they're not dumb people, but that means they're either evil or ambivalent about it. Ambivalent can mean they didn't know and didn't care, like it was under the radar, or ambivalent is they did know and didn't care. Evil, I think, is a little more far-fetched. I don't think the intention of Mark Zuckerberg when he invented this thing was that Donald Trump would get elected in 2016. But it's a lot to let slip through.
It feels like, if I may channel Ian Malcolm a little bit from Jurassic Park 1, when he talks about genetic engineering like a child who's found his father's gun and he's just wielding it around, right? Yep. Dad's gun. Now, if we could use that idea for a second, and this might be a little extreme, but maybe it'll help the conversation. It kind of feels to me that Facebook basically said, hey, only non-murderers can hold our gun, can hold this gun. And people would say, okay, cool, that makes sense. That's fine. Yeah, if you don't have a record, and the way Facebook checked is they just said, like, here you go. Are you a murderer? No. Okay, cool. You can hold the gun. Hey, are you a murderer? No. Okay, cool. You can hold the gun. There wasn't, maybe it was irresponsible with how they were, I think, controlling who could get the data. Yeah. Is that accurate?
I want to piggyback off of the sentiment, and I don't think it was, are you a murderer? Can I hold this gun? I think the question was more focused around, is this going to help users connect to one another? Okay, you can hold this gun, even if it's at the expense of collateral damage. Like there were quotes from, it might have been New York Magazine. One of Zuckerberg's right-hand mans, as it were, was quoted as saying, like, even if a terrorist attack is planned on Facebook, even if someone gets murdered as a result of whatever meeting on Facebook, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, it doesn't matter as long as it helps expand the network and connect more people. So I'm not saying that that's a bad priority to have, but that's sort of the attitude that we're dealing with. And I think there's failures all up and down this, right? It's a social contract signing up for a tool like this. And I think it's we're a little bit victims of the time, in that this is the first social network that has grown so large, that has had a mission statement such that it has, where they're starting with really good intentions. They want to connect people, but to sustain an ambition of connecting everyone on the planet requires money. And the way to make money for tools like this on the internet is through advertising. And so if you're a social network that wields so much wealth and power, you have to be able to develop ad tools that will allow you to, like, generate this massive amount of income. So you develop these really, really powerful tools.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's a failure there, is that, like, a lack of oversight on Facebook's part. Cool. But we've also failed too, because we've given them all of, like, the tool itself, Facebook, isn't all that powerful if no one's giving it their eyeballs and no one's giving it their personal data. We've incentivized Facebook to make these tools. I like you said from your perspective as a podcaster, you can't tell people one way or the other to use it or not use it. I think you can use it, but know what you're doing and know what you're allowing it to do, or don't use it.
Well, may I comment on that a little bit? Oh, sorry. We are getting poor network connection. I've got a little thing on Skype right now on the screen. But if I could speak to that a little bit, you're absolutely right. Sometimes if people metaphorically stop me on the street and say, Facebook, good or bad, I'm kind of like, dude, come on.
Right.
I don't know. I'm just a podcaster. Yeah. But what I usually say to some of my friends and family that have asked me about this, I say, well, you can use it, but you kind of have to use it responsibly. Understand that if you are giving certain things away, if you're saying, yes, you can have access to my contacts, yes, you can have access to this or that, seriously consider what that means, Yeah. Is it worth knowing that you're Khaleesi,
Right, Yeah. I've been saying for a long time to quit Facebook. And I was also right about Donald Trump. And at this point, I really hate being right about this shit, but you've got to stop. Just quit. You don't need it. I've heard a lot of people in new media, and I have a lot of friends who do stuff that requires a social network. There are other ones that aren't Facebook. And they always ask me well, what's the difference? Why is Facebook so bad? What about Twitter? What about Instagram? Instagram's owned by Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. None of those other platforms are the perfect storm of this that Facebook is. And maybe if Facebook stock goes to zero, another one will crop up and we'll all flock to that. But really consider quitting Facebook because there's no other machine like it that has allowed such small numbers of individuals to wield so much power over information. Maybe Google.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. And the pitch is, oh, hey, local store owner with not a huge marketing budget, spend a couple dollars and we'll super focus the ad to exactly the demographic that you can hit. Where an old model, maybe a television commercial or something in the newspaper, back in the 90s or something, you're going to be hitting a lot of your demographic that you don't even need. I can see where the seed starts and the idea where it's exciting. But this is a snowball rolling down a hill quite a bit.
It sure is. And I think, previous episodes, we've talked about the wonders of blockchain technology and public decentralized ledgers and such. And this is another case of where this would have saved us a lot of heartache, right?
Wait, where are we at? We're at almost 22 minutes. Leona told me when we were putting together some show notes, we had a business meeting before recording. She said, how many minutes before Alex says the word blockchain tonight?
It doesn't take long. What are we at? 22 minutes? That's where we're at now?
About
okay.
that.
Did I hit the spread? Did I cover the spread? That's a thing, right?
So, but anyway, as you're saying, yeah. So you're about to propose that blockchain is going to save the world.
Well, the reason that this is dangerous is that one company, Facebook, owns all of it.
There it is.
If this were decentralized data that everyone had access to, you could have a bunch of different ad tech companies that offer the same type of analytics to all the mom and pop stores. Right. So you give them the same sort of operational acumen that a Walmart or a whatever has.
On a personal note, I have noticed that for the past year or so, my personal Facebook activity has really minimized. I used to get so excited, 5 years ago, I used to get so excited about putting all my photos up on Facebook and tagging every last little thing. And these days, I kind of looked at my own personal wall and it's really just Technophiles and another Zelda podcast posts. I don't really engage that much anymore. And I haven't necessarily done it consciously. I think you've kind of consciously disengaged quite a bit. But for me, it's just fading. And I wonder if we could speak to the life cycle of a social network a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of think, I forget what user posted it on Reddit. And it might be a little ironic to source Reddit when we're talking about the death spiral of different social networks and social sites like Reddit. But some user posted a graph on the Data is Beautiful subreddit, and it just kind of gave you some nice peeks on where these social networks lived and what their life cycle was. And it starts with MySpace.
On the video version, I'm so sorry. On the video version of our episode, I'm gonna try to post it right now.
So you see where like MySpace kind of gains popularity, has a nice peak, and then eventually Tom sells it to Justin Timberlake. And then you see Facebook start, and you see Snapchat start, and Instagram, and all that. And we are definitely on the downslope of Facebook.
Facebook is almost 50. If you're considering it as a mountain and you're climbing all the way up to the top, it's already halfway down on the other side.
And that can kind of speak to the power of the analytics and ad platform as well, because if you are putting all this stock into it and 2 years down the road, it's gone, all that work was for nothing. And this kind of goes back to the product lock-in thing, where I have a lot of friends telling me that I've used Facebook to sign up for Spotify, or I've used Facebook to sign up for whatever. That's a hard lesson to learn. And a lot of these things you can go in and link it to different authentication sources like your email address or Twitter or whatever. But, you know, if you've got 30 services that you're all signed in through Facebook, that's a lot of work to turn that all over. But it's not going to last forever. So it's probably going to be
Facebook saw this coming a few years ago, which is why they bought Instagram, because they were trying to compete with Snapchat at the time.
And they're sort of even further back than that, right? Like you look at the life cycle of large tech companies like AOL and Yahoo and Google, right? They've all become portfolio companies. AOL now owns a ton of media properties and is itself owned by Verizon. Google is owned by Alphabet, and Alphabet owns a bunch of other companies. So it's sort of part of the natural cycle of how corporations seem to function over time, is that there's a lot of startups for a period, and then there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions for a period. And this, I think if all the blogs and soothsayers are to be believed, we're kind of in the M&A portion of our most recent cycle.
So does this just fix itself in a couple of years? Nobody uses Facebook anymore, and then we're done? Or how does this keep going forward?
Well, I think that, if Facebook operated like a small startup, then yeah, I think that would be likely with its current trajectory, because when you're a startup and you're not a publicly traded company, your mechanisms for profitability are a little bit limited. And yes, there's like, with venture capital being what it is, there's room to operate without turning a profit. But at the end of the day, you really are at the mercy of monthly and daily active users. And if we see a startup losing users and losing eyeballs at the rate Facebook does, they're not going to be able to raise future rounds. They're not going to be able to do anything, and they'll eventually die. Since they are a publicly traded company, there are other mechanisms to keep this company afloat. Not to mention, they have a ton of cash on hand and some pretty profitable properties. Like they could sell Instagram for $1 billion and still be a company for a while. So I don't think it's as simple as losing users is going to be the end of Facebook, because let's be honest, how many AOL users are there? And it is still a company, right?
I see where you're going with this, but let me offer this. Losing the users means they have less power to what's the correct word here? To manipulate?
Yeah, sure. I think what I'd say to that is, you have to then look at their resources. If every user dropped off the face of the planet tomorrow, you'd have to look at their resources and see what they would do as a company. This is kind of why a lot of the tech companies keep a lot of cash stores on hand, is because they're kind of waiting. And this is a little bit off topic, but this kind of illustrates the point, is that like they're all kind of waiting for the next big tech consumer product, and they are going to wait until one of them makes it, and then they're all going to dump hundreds of millions of dollars to do the same thing and bring a similar product to market. So that could be a viable strategy for Facebook if they lose all their users. So
I see.
I think they're going to be operating as a company for a long time. I think we could hasten their demise if we all quit, but like I said, there's other mechanisms that could keep them afloat as a publicly traded company with so much money on hand. Yeah.
Interesting.
I was going to make a point.
Yeah, no, it's
don't even
okay. I might
remember.
have pulled you off
I
the
don't even
point.
remember what it was.
It's all right.
I don't know. It'll come
Well,
to me.
I was speaking about social. So, is this cyclical? Do in 6 years, there's a different social network that everybody gives their life to, and then they get controlled again. I'm taking real broad
Yeah, I
strokes
mean,
here,
in my
but yeah,
opinion, it's tough to tell because the the timeline for these companies being born and being billion-dollar companies is so short now. It's hard to really kind of predict what's going to happen in the future. Like
yeah,
if you look at companies that existed at the turn of the century, it took them decades to be as profitable
right.
as Apple
Lifetimes
was, right?
sometimes.
Yeah. Like, so
Yeah,
Apple comes along and becomes the most valuable company in the world over the course of like 4 or 5 years. And then
right.
that just injects a ton of money into the Silicon Valley ecosystem. And then you
Yes.
get a couple home runs with purely software products that are cheap to build, that don't require warehouses cranking out iPhones or iPods. So now you've got even more money
Fair
into a
enough.
system, and you've made a lot of people a lot of money who don't have to work anymore, who can then spend their time investing in whatever they want. So potentially that means that, yes, we're just locked into a cycle of companies becoming uber profitable really, really quickly, and having a ton of smart people that they can pay to do whatever they want. But it could also mean that we strike out a bunch very, very rapidly, and the money just kind of gets sucked out of the ecosystem. Like, let's say there's a 5-year period where there isn't another Uber, there isn't another Amazon, there isn't another Facebook, and that's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in venture capital that's just gone. So we'll see. I don't know. It's tough to tell based on how quickly these things come and go.
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you think? Because like I think so. My biggest question is I don't really use Facebook to communicate a ton, but I feel like you and I both
Yeah.
have parents of a certain age, siblings of a certain age, cousins of a certain age that all seem to gravitate toward Facebook as sort of their main tool. I know what I've kind of been doing to try and steer people away from it. Is there anything you're doing to try and migrate your conversations and connections off of Facebook or off of any social network?
Well, the only thing for me is that I've observed that I'm passively using Facebook less. And I think the dominating factor, and I'm serious about this, is that it's a hear me out. This is a little silly, but the app on my iPhone is humongous.
Yeah.
And it's constantly offloading. I'm constantly offloading it to make room for other stuff. And after a while, I just go like, I'm not even going to download it anymore. I don't even care. I don't use it enough that I care about that 300 megabytes or whatever it is, you know?
But did you find that
300 megabytes isn't huge, but it's enough that it's the first thing I offload
Yeah.
when I need a little extra space.
do you find that you were then using email or Twitter or whatever more to replace that?
Yeah, I use Twitter a little more personally. I will speak candidly, and I know and then a little bit slightly hypocritically when we're doing promotions for all the podcasts, we find most of our traction happens through Instagram these days.
Interesting.
Weird,
Yeah.
right?
Now I'm a founder of a social network, primarily based around email, so I might be a little biased. But there's something to be said about the open nature of that kind of tooling, right? Now, it's a quirk of the platform that you can maintain your privacy when talking back and forth, but you still get the same rich kinds of media. You can still send yourself a picture. You can send a GIF. You can send a GIF if you're so inclined. I'll argue with you on the pronunciation, but you could do it. What is the problem with these? Why isn't that enough? I feel like if I had to guess,
I think there's an active. Yeah. If you had to guess,
if I had to guess, I think it's something that's innately human, just born of curiosity and sort of the wanting to be able to spy on other people in an earnest way.
I agree. I think there's kind of a performance element to social media a
Yep.
little bit that people are attracted
That's sort
to.
of
It gives them attention.
That was one of the behaviors in me that I identified when I went on my personal crusade to rid myself of the Facebook, and it's because I kind of identified that. Well, I'm kind of tricking myself into getting the same kind of stimulus as I would talking to another person one-on-one. But in reality, all I was doing was talking into a black hole. But the simple act of like typing the words out and pressing post was giving me the same kind of feedback as talking to you would. Even if I didn't hear a response right away. It was this sort of passive communication that for a lot of people, well, here's the thing too. I think our generation and generations below us were introduced a lot earlier on and a lot more frequently to text-based communication, right? AOL Instant Messenger,
Yes.
IRC, whatever.
That was high school for me. That was the hot thing when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I'd bring up 9 windows and just chat away with all my friends.
Absolutely. So this is a behavior that's ingrained in us from the beginning now, and it's completely normal to talk over text. So that's not an issue. It might be a little off-putting to older generations to say, well, why am I typing this out? Why can't I just speak to a person? But yeah, I kind of think that I tricked myself into feeling that it was the same sort of interaction. Plus, I was finding that the kinds of conversations I was having on Facebook, since they were passive, since you could formulate a response, was a little bit artificial. And so you can come up with a 6-paragraph response to anything, and it wouldn't be a conversation. If we talk about, like, let's say something like a debate over gun control, right? You can say, I don't think it's a problem. Everyone should have guns. And then you can have someone reply back in 10 paragraphs all the reasons why they disagree with you. But then you have to kind of go point by point, all 6 paragraphs, 10 paragraphs, whatever, and refute that. And that's not a conversation. That's like writing books back and forth. And that just kind of was orthogonal to the purpose for me, that I was trying to be social, but in reality, all I was doing was like writing thesis after thesis about why I disagreed with whoever I was like addressing.
Now that sounds a lot like emails, but other people can see it, is what you're talking about. I think a lot of people use social media for if I may, just for this conversation, for perhaps the opposite reason. It's a lot of quick little drips and drops of candy and attention and interface, so, to the point where you don't even have to write a sentence anymore, be it for the last 8 years. You can just like a thing. You can just click a thing and say, oh, I acknowledge. You don't even have to type anymore, we could say. And I think it gives people that interaction. They like to say, hey, how's Johnny doing? Who I haven't seen John for 10 years. I'm going to go take a look at his wall. And, oh, it looks like he has some kids. And, well, that's nice. And there's obviously some kind of value to that. I personally have felt that I am slightly more in touch with some of my high school friends or college friends because of this kind of passive absorbing of their lives, so that the next time I see them in person, I have more to speak about and I have a little bit of context. There is some value to that.
But I would assert that you could get that over any number of social networks, and not the one that is
I would not disagree.
The most powerful propaganda machine we've ever built.
I would not disagree.
Anyway, I'm gonna get off my high horse, get down on a little tiny horse, maybe a
what is it?
burro.
Wait, if we're positing that social networks have a lifespan and that there might be an evolution to what a social network even is it trending towards things like Slack or things like that, where it's becoming these kind of in the middle spaces where a bunch of group, almost it becomes like a private group message board where you have a little bit of a social, because certainly most of my interface these days, like I was just, as we were recording this, I'm thinking to myself, well, I tweet a little bit here and there, but I don't post anything to Facebook anymore unless I'm trying to promote something, which is funny because that lines up with it. And I said, most of my engagement happens like on Slack and stuff.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's probably just because of all the stuff that we're working on right now. It's kind of more of like a job thing. I don't know, but I do know that there are plenty of Slack groups out there that people do just for casual and for fun. You can do whatever you want with it. Is that where it's going, or is it not, or does it not matter?
Yeah, I hope so. increasingly things are starting to look more like the old web. If we just kind of like take some of the shiny veneer off the more popular tools, right? Slack is just IRC. Slack is just a chat room, right? There was a Wired article this past week about the resurgence of RSS feeds to deliver content. So it's sort of
I would like to see that. That would make me feel warm inside.
So it's sort of this decoupling of centralized authority over our conversations and content, right? What I would like to see is more things like that, things that are less federated by one Facebook or one Twitter or one Apple, and things that are more spread out, that are delivered over a series of tubes that are free to distribute content over and consumed by multiple different kinds of clients that can interact with the same kind of information, similar to an RSS reader, similar to like an IRC.
Yeah, I see that. And we're going to kind of wrap it up here in a minute or two. But what I'm also kind of hearing you say, or maybe what I'm deducing from what you're saying, you can correct me if I've got the wrong idea, is that, I'll say personally for me, I don't know if you're saying this, I'll say for me, like there is something exciting and magical about a lot of data being on the internet, and that's a tool that we can use. That's something that we as, humanity has not had that before. There could be, you can I'm jumping, but you could cure disease, or you could figure out trends of cancer patients, or you could figure out all these things. And there are versions where big data can be very exciting, and that there could be versions where that could really be used for good, we could say. But what I'm hearing you say is that big data in some ways can still exist, but it doesn't all have to be in the same barn. If that's the same bin, same place.
Decentralized, Dave. I'm going to say it again. As soon as we have one or two really great blockchain technologies that become easy to use, fungible, a lot of clients accepting data from it, we're going to be in a better place.
Sure.
I'm going to keep talking into my microphone.
So it's not so much. That sounds good. We're going to have you do like an audiobook that way or something like that. So Alex, I mean, for me, I don't know. There is something cool. The science lover in me wants to celebrate the opportunity to use data to solve things that, information is good. Data can be good. Knowledge is wonderful. I want to celebrate those things. And I think there are ways where that data and information can be used, and we can really capture that with the internet. That can be a magical thing. But it does sound like you would agree, or I'm agreeing with you rather, that it doesn't necessarily mean that all that data has to be in one place.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like the key point here is access to the data, and the data itself has to serve to further democratic mechanisms in our society. What I mean by that is the free flow of information over a network called the internet is a very democratizing force. The flow of information over a closed network that has many rules for constructing and digesting the data, such as on a social network like Facebook, less democratizing. So I think that the point here is that, we need these tools. Humanity needs all the help it can get, but we need these tools to be liberating and democratizing and freely available, and less closed down, and less trademarked, and less owned by single authorities.
Sure. So with that, I don't want to give people advice on what they can do. They can make their own choices, because I don't think it's that simple. Perhaps it is that simple, but for everybody, it's the right for their own interpretation. But I think we've talked about some nice things here tonight. Do you have any final closing comments? Because that was a pretty decent one that you just made, the point you just made.
If we could just rewind the footage and play it one more time for our listeners, I think that's probably going to be the best.
Just with a little music behind, just like some encouraging music, and then we're there.
I think that's probably the best you're going to get out of me right now.
Yeah, that's fine. That's cool. That's cool, dude.
Yeah, dude. I could say I could say it in my narration voice. We need more democratizing forces in society, like the internet, like blockchain. Get rid of that centralized authority. Get rid of that Facebook.
Those inhales and exhales.
Just delete your account. #.
Some pretty exciting audio. All right, Alex. Wonderful.
Great.
Well, thanks for Skyping in.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me again.
I'll see you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll see you around.
Always, as always, it's always a pleasure.
Hey, Dave.
I kind of liked. Yes.
I was going to ask because there were so many people that listened to the last episode I was on. They're like, I know you, Alex. I know you personally. We've met, but I don't know this David character. If I wanted to find out more about this David character and I needed to go online to do so, where would I find him?
Wow, you are being a co-host, and I appreciate it. That's wonderful. That reminds me of the olden days.
Well,
that reminds me of back in the day.
Trying to pull my weight.
I appreciate it. People are welcome to find me on my respective social networks. Most notably, however, these days I'm probably the most active on Twitter and I guess a bit of Instagram, and you can find me at Raptor Paint. If people want to tweet the show at Technophiles Pod, that would be wonderful. If you are watching this on YouTube, however, please feel free to leave comments down in the episodes. We'll get back to you. We'll speak to those points in future episodes and all of that. Alex, where would you be inclined to have people where would you be inclined to have people be inclined to continue the conversation with you?
Well, continue the conversation with me primarily on Twitter. I am at Works on My Machine, if you can even see this. I would guess you can.
I think it's blowing out.
That's fine. At Works on My Machine, no O in Works. I am also that handle on Reddit. I am that handle on Instagram. Twitter, if you want to start a quick little convo with me. Where else? I don't know. I have an email. You can email me. You can type my name in caps lock on the YouTube comment thread. I might find it there.
Fantastic.
But that's, Works on My Machine.
Indeed. That's cool. That's cool. All right, Alex. Well, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks for another reason and another thing we're going to talk about. And I hope you have a good night.
All that, but you too.
I'll take it. Hey. See you later, man. I feel like at this point we need to do like a jump up freeze frame.
One step ahead of you, Dave.
Hold it. Hold it through the credits. Hold it through the credits. I'm serious. And we're coming back in 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was just...